Join us as we bring all the excitement home to you.
Agnes, a flood of memories is being brought to you by Pennsylvania Gas and Water Company.
A current affair and entertainment tonight will not be seen, but will return tomorrow night at the regular time. Stay tuned now for a WBRE-TV Eyewitness News special report, Agnes, a flood of memories.
Get out now. There's still time, but this is the warning that the river is starting to come over the dike.
Work on the dikes has ceased. The water is expected to break through. Keep your head about you. There are plenty of people around to help you out. You have places to stay. You will have food. You will have bedding. You will have everything. So don't panic. Just get yourself to safety as quickly as possible.
South Wilkes-Barrie, completely inundated with water. You can't even see a road, a side road, an alley, a back street, or a backyard. The water is cresting at the first floor of many of the homes in the South Wilkes-Barrie section. All it is muddy Susquehanna.
The Susquehanna River plays an important, mostly beneficial, but largely overlooked role in the life of central and northeastern Pennsylvania. And standing here in June of 1992, it's easy to see why it's so easy to take the river for granted. But standing here on June 23rd of 1972 would have been impossible. And what you're about to see for many people will bring back a flood of memories.
What would become Hurricane Agnes had its unremarkable beginning on the Yucatan when a harmless tropical depression formed on June 14th of 1972. Within the next 2 days, this tropical depression, an area of low pressure, moved off to the east, out over the open waters of the Gulf of Mexico, picking up moisture and, more importantly, picking up energy. And on the 16th of June became a tropical storm and for the first time was given the name Agnes. The storm continued to move and strengthen on the 16th and 17th of June. Agnes was then upgraded to hurricane status on June 18th. By this date, Agnes was located just to the northwest of the island of Cuba. At this point, Agnes takes a turn, one of many turns it will take over the next several days. It's now moving to the northwest as a hurricane, and it is headed for Florida. And on June 19th, Agnes makes landfall, slamming into the panhandle of Florida between Panama City and Apalachicola. Now, during the night of June 19th and the daytime hours of June 20th, Agnes moves inland and very, very quickly weakens, once again becoming a tropical depression. It is now an unnamed storm. However, by the early morning hours of June 21st, this tropical depression strengthens in the Carolinas, and by midday of June 21st is once again a tropical storm. And Agnes is back in business, located over eastern North Carolina. It was at this point that most experts felt that the danger from Agnes was over. In fact, Agnes did move offshore, now harmlessly spinning and twisting over the open waters of the mid-Atlantic. Agnes is now located just east of the Delmarva Peninsula. It is here during the morning hours of June 22nd that Agnes would make its cruelest turn of all, curving back to the northwest. Agnes from there will make landfall near New York City and continue on to the northwest, spreading torrential rainfall over New York State and Pennsylvania, changing forever the Wyoming Valley.
Even after Agnes had changed direction and started heading south toward New York and Pennsylvania, there seemed to be no cause for alarm. General Frank Townend directed civil defense efforts in Luzerne County during the flood.
We weren't worried on Monday or Tuesday.
From the Flood Forecasting Center at Harrisburg.
Widespread small stream flooding is expected tonight throughout the Susquehanna Basin, including the Juniata and West Branch. Main channels are well below flood levels, and no mainstream flooding is expected at this time.
In the basement of the Luzerne County Courthouse, Townend discussed the approaching storm with his assistants, John McCormick and Nick Suchik. After detecting no immediate danger, Townend leaves for a convention in New Jersey, but calls back while en route.
It's getting critical, General. Harrisburg is predicting a 24-foot crest for tomorrow, and it could get worse. We're expecting at least 5 inches of rain.
Okay, Nick, I'll come back. Get the 109th alerted for that patrol on the dike.
Just 2 months before, in April of 1972, Luzerne County Defense had conducted a flood evacuation exercise. With each passing minute in June of 72, it appeared that exercise would prove valuable.
Flood bulletins for 9:30 p.m. Thursday, June 22nd. Record or near-record stages are being forecast through the entire Susquehanna River Valley. Towanda, Pennsylvania, 25.8 feet and rising. Wilkes-Barrie, 20.6 feet and rising.
That news meant one thing for people in low-lying areas near the Susquehanna: evacuation.
Everybody up! Everybody out!
As the initial evacuations took place, emergency officials continued to meet in the courthouse, the waters rising just yards away. As that meeting continued in the basement of the courthouse, the water level in Towanda was reaching 33 feet. Back then, river forecasting was not an exact science, but officials used a rough formula that whatever the water level was in Towanda, it would be here 12 hours later, plus 6 feet higher. Their forecast was just a little bit short.
Forecast is for 40 feet at sometime around 10 o'clock to noon this morning. We've got to get people out there and work on the dikes, get them built up as high as we can.
I want 50 tons of sand at the Ross Street pumping station, and I want it there by 5 a.m.
They came by the thousands. Volunteers started shoveling sand and dirt into bags, covering about 2 miles of the dike, raising them 2 feet in 6 hours' time.
If the water had stopped at 37 feet, we would have held the flood within the dikes. As a matter of fact, it's possible that we would have been able to hold it at 38 feet, although at that area it's about doubtful.
In the early morning hours of June 22nd, the evacuation order was extended to everyone along the river.
This is very bad news. The forecast now is that the river is going to be higher than the dikes, that it's actually going to get to a crest of about 40 feet sometime between 8 o'clock and noon today.
As the rising water started to pour into the courthouse, civil defense officials scrambled to upper floors. Then, just before 11 a.m., John McCormick called from along the river dike.
General, I'm down here on Riverside Drive, and as it now looks, we've had to clear it. The water is coming over. That's all we can do.
In our announcement at 5 o'clock and later, it said, when we give up, when we want you to take off from the dike, we will blow the sirens, and that'll be the signal for everybody to stop work and go to higher ground.
It took an agonizing 14 minutes before the sirens finally sounded.
Get out now. Get out now. There's still time, but this is the warning that the river is starting to come over the dike.
Then, shortly after 12 noon on June 22nd, 1972, the floodwaters that would change the future of the Wyoming Valley began to slowly spill over the dike.
The Susquehanna River smashes through the dikes. Its wrath, its awesome destructive power unleashed on the Wyoming Valley. The valley is now one big body of water.
Unbelievable. South Wilkes-Barrie completely inundated with water.
It's Mother Nature at its very worst and most frightening. The lives of more than 80,000 people will never be the same. Many leave before their homes are destroyed, but some are trapped as a call for help goes out.
Wilkes-Barrie police, anyone who has a boat, requested to bring it to the police department.
Just about every boat and helicopter within a 100-mile radius of the Wyoming Valley is pressed into service. Just about everywhere you look, there was a rescue.
We have a report of 4 people on a rooftop, corner of Church and Rudder.
And each rescue was a struggle for life. 2-year-old Debbie Kindler was in the care of her grandmother in South Wilkes-Barrie when the waters began to rise.
We weren't thinking because we woke up it was during the night when they came down on Academy Street, and they announced evacuate immediately, which we didn't know. We were in bed when they told us, and we had to get up and rush out. We really rushed out, and we went up to WBRE-TV Apartments.
What did you think when you were holding that little baby in the middle of a disaster?
It was scary because I was afraid I was going to drop her in the water when I had her on the boat because she was screaming, and it was scary.
Debbie's parents were in upstate New York attending a business conference when the waters rushed in. They never thought it could happen, and they could not believe their eyes when they finally made it back home.
Coming down 81 is still vivid in my mind of what our city looked like. It was just a haze. There were helicopters all over, the Army trucks. It was just devastation. We were sick.
And it wasn't until several hours later that they learned their little girl was alive and well. Many people were evacuated from their homes in the middle of the night. Most, in fact, were lucky they got out of their homes with what they had on their back. So they were brought here to the WBRE-TV Apartments on Northampton Street. This would be their safe haven, but for a few precious hours, because it was learned there was a possibility of a gas explosion here, and fires burned all around the apartments. So those evacuees had to go through it a second time.
We had to go down the stairway, and it was dark. And some of the people had to be carried down the steps because they couldn't walk down. It was scary. It was scary. Then we had to crawl out of a window backwards, and the rescue fellas, they pulled us out and put us on that canopy and then lowered us to a boat, and that was scary because she screamed, "Lou murder."
And I'm glad I had my grandmother there. It amazes me, my parents, they left me behind. So I'm glad that I had someone like my grandmother. She's been my best friend for many years, so it was nice having her there and having that now to cherish. It'll be nice.
A steady stream of evacuees went through Jean Luster's apartment window at WBRE-TV.
So the man staying in the boat would grab a hold of the lady's legs so he can get her into boat. The boat was rocking, you know. It was, and then another person came, then some of them with children.
And the same scene was repeated over and over again all over the valley.
It was awful. The people were so concerned and frightened. And, you know, we didn't know whether we're going to keep our food or should we throw it out, you know, because we couldn't get out of the building anymore. That was finished. We just had to wait till the boat. The boats weren't that big.
But luckily, big enough. Max Bartikowski owns a jewelry store in Center City. He moved much of his valuable merchandise to the second floor, and then he moved to higher ground.
The night before the flood, I stayed with a friend of mine at the Sterling Hotel, and he had a room in there. He was a resident of the hotel, and I figured, well, will the flood come or won't it? And we woke up the next morning, and there the waters were through. You could look out his window on Market Street and see into the square, and you could see just the water all the way, as far as the eye could see.
Dr. Robert Capon was a professor at Wilkes College when the dikes broke. He was able to salvage only some of his books and records before the water rose. This is his class book from the summer of 1972.
It was a demoralizing situation. However, there are a lot of lessons to be learned from the flood. One is you learn that you really didn't need a lot of things that you think you need on a day-to-day basis. And the other is that there are certain things which you do consider unimportant that become important at that particular time. I'll give you a very quick example. My wife one day said, "Gee, if I only had a needle and thread," and we didn't have one.
Demoralizing, yes. Hopeless, no. The need was great, but the response to that need was even greater. Shelters were set up in schools and churches. At least for now, the homeless had a roof over their heads.
Well, she's young. She don't understand what it's all about. But it's a sad thing, you know, losing everything that you have like that.
But thankfully, many others did. Pocono Downs Racetrack and the Wilkes-Barrie Scranton International Airport were staging areas for a massive support effort. Eugene Peters was the mayor of Scranton. His city was spared the full wrath of Agnes. He volunteered to coordinate relief efforts for his friends to the south.
It was just unbelievable, the havoc that was created, the damage that was created, and that the river could become so big and so wide and so fierce and so ferocious.
Communications was virtually gone, except for some ham radio operators. But still, the cries for help got out.
We then began by radio and by word of mouth making contact with as many people as we could, and we asked for just about anything conceivable: doctors, medicine, foods, and help.
And it came from everywhere. People who may not have been affected by the floodwaters, but rather affected by human pain.
Mothers start coming with station wagons with foodstuffs. We began seeing truckloads of foods not being sold, but just brought, dispensed to others. We saw a real human need, and we also saw a great human feeling of sharing and wanting to help.
For as cold and brutal as Agnes was, it was the warm, loving care of people from all walks of life that made the difference.
Think about who you'll be driving around over the next, say, 7 days. That's how long your dealer said it would take before he could fix your brakes. At Midas, we think that's exactly 7 days too long. Because our experts can fix them right the very same day you bring in your car. And that's something to think about today. Midas, because your brakes can't wait.
It's Acme's Super Summer Coupon Sale. Save up to $39 on 48 coupon items. Get a full case of Pepsi, that's 24 12-ounce cans, a low $4.59. Turkey Hill ice cream, half gallon, just $1.79. Crisp California iceberg lettuce, only 49 cents. Check this week's circular for these and more Super Summer Coupon savings. And check out Lancaster brand lean bottom round roast at the lowest price of the year, $1.49 a pound. Only at Acme, your neighborhood store.
June 23rd, 1972, the day that changed our lives. In Agnes, a flood of memories, WBRE-TV captures all of the drama caused by Hurricane Agnes, the devastation, destruction, and rebuilding. Be an eyewitness to history. Order your copy of WBRE-TV's one-hour VHS tape, Agnes, a Flood of Memories, just $14.95. Or send $16.95 for the video and the Times Leader Special Edition report, Agnes Revisited.
When comparing central air conditioners, some things are obvious. Like most units, this has virtually no protection for the coil. A hailstorm, a rock from your lawnmower, almost any mishap can lead to expensive repairs. But look at Trane. Strong steel panels on all four sides. Solid protection.
It's hard to stop a train.
For prompt and efficient air conditioning service in Wilkes-Barrie, call the professionals at H.W. Price Heating and Air. For sales and service that people trust most in Scranton, the one to remember is Scranton Electric Heating and Cooling Service.
It was here at the bend in the river in 44th that the surging water first strained and then broke through the dike system. And in a matter of minutes, just a block away, veteran WBRE journalist Jerry Baum found himself in the dual role of being flood reporter and flood victim.
At 7:15 the morning of the 23rd, a man who identified himself as a fireman began to pound on our front door. He was yelling, "Turn off the gas, pull out all the cords, disconnect everything, and get as fast as you can to the Dana Street School Evacuation Center." Well, needless to say, we followed those orders, but we were able to get back here a short time later, and we tried to move some of the furniture and some other valuables from the first floor up to the second level, hopefully to keep them out of the floodwaters. Then we went across the street to the River Street Dike, where there were about 150 people filling sandbags and hauling dirt and rock from convoys of trucks that were coming in, trying to reinforce the dike, but it was all done in vain. The Susquehanna topped the dike with a tremendous force and speed. Like a funnel, it swept everything in its path as water shut down Butler Street, seeking its lowest level in the barrel. Everything had been done to fight back. Then another evacuation order was issued. Sheldon Glahn was a Red Cross disaster official in 1972. In fact, his appointment became effective the morning of the flood.
At first, we went around just evacuating people, getting them collected. First, we used the 44th United Presbyterian Church. Then when that went underwater, we took them to the high school. And that was a mistake because that went underwater. Then they had to be evacuated by boat. And then I spent most of my time with my son's ski boat pulling people out of houses and taking them out to dry land. We did that for about 2 days. And then after that, then I was in my own home for about 15 minutes. I managed to get my wife's portrait into the attic and salvaged a few old chairs, and by that time the water was spurting out of the floor and it was time to leave.
Mr. and Mrs. Glahn have a permanent marker which shows the water level at 6 feet 6 inches on the first floor. Glahn was in the valley during the flood because of his job, and he came back to his home on Bidlack Street. All he had was a box of crackers, a jar of peanut butter, and a soft drink.
I broke in the front door to get in the house. My aluminum siding was charged with 110 volts, with the full voltage, which I had been concerned about. So I had to take the meter off the house first, which meant I had no lights. And then I stayed here for several days before the family came back.
Ruth Glahn was a hairstylist. She was still working in her shop until 11 o'clock the morning of the flood. That's when the sirens began to wail. She got some lunch, and that's when things started to happen.
And we went over to the cemetery about 1 o'clock. And we were amazed at what we saw. The vaults came right up out of the ground, and I never thought that vaults would float, but they floated. And the trees, these huge trees, just came up by the roots, just floated right up. And so pretty soon I heard a voice say, "Ruth, if you don't get out of here, you're going out in a boat."
The river tore through and under the cemetery. 2,500 burials were displaced. Today, a memorial marks the devastated area. 1992 also means that many Small Business Administration disaster loans will be paid in full. The Glahns, like many others, took out a 20-year loan at 1% to rebuild their homes. They made their final payment in March, and the house is theirs. This was the water line on River Street when the Susquehanna finally stopped rising. When it began to recede, it had stopped just shy of the first floor of my house, but many of us were equally concerned about WBRE-TV on Franklin Street in Wilkes-Barrie. It was our place of employment, our bread and butter, and the TV station was in real trouble.
Now, at the highest point of the floodwaters, all of this, the entire ground floor studio level of WBRE, was underwater. The level just over my head here on the ground floor. But because of advanced warning and round-the-clock work by technicians and staff, we were able to stay on the air without interruption using a temporary studio at our transmitter building. This was a time that WBRE's John Bendick remembers well.
None of us in the media were prepared for what we saw from the air, lifted above the flood by helicopters provided by the Pennsylvania National Guard. What we recorded on that first flight was what the nation, the entire country, saw that night. And back in the newsroom later in the day, the calls poured in from all over the nation. The national media hungry for more details, more pictures. We gave them all we had. Many of us on that first flight trembled with the thought of that first look at our own flooded homes. And that's what made this story so special, so memorable. We were reporters, but we were victims. And when the military helicopters landed, we jumped aboard boats, and this look at the flood from street level was as awesome as the view from the air. Throughout the flights and throughout the boat rides, reporters and cameramen were strangely silent. I suppose we knew this was to be the biggest story we would ever cover. My photographers, Tom Smith in the air, Fritz Chamberlain in the boats, and George Monagas, all part of history. There weren't many jackets and ties to be seen during the coverage of the 1972 flood. Yes, that's John Bendick, 1972, wearing what I grabbed when I left home in a hurry. Reporters, photographers worked this story day and night, and we worked and worked and worked.
Energy-efficient natural gas. It makes a house a home.
When you buy a new home, you have the right to expect the very best. At Glamora, we set a standard of construction excellence, which includes natural gas heat and appliances.
People buying our homes are concerned about comfort and fuel economy. And Hannon Homes, they get both with natural gas.
For all the things you care about, natural gas from PG&W.
We asked Maureen Waldron why she switched from Murphy oil soap to Pledge household cleaner.
There is a big difference. I don't have time to put into rinsing my house. But with the Pledge household cleaner, I didn't have to rinse it off. It's just a smooth, clean feeling. So if I can cut out 20 minutes with Pledge household cleaner, then that's an additional 20 minutes I can spend with my baby, which is important.
Pledge household cleaner gently cleans all your household surfaces beautifully from S.C. Johnson Wax.
It's going to be Pledge.
Cars. Seems like we just can't live without them. Of course, some people have a difficult time living because of them. After a speeding driver crashed into this car, the innocent victim traded it in on this. The law firm of Coviello & Miller will make the guilty party pay for your pain and suffering. Call Coviello & Miller now, 1-800-528-1114. Our only fees come from monies collected for you.
Well, one of the misconceptions about the flood is that the damage was confined to just a few areas. The fact of the matter is the rampaging river did serious damage in many places that didn't get as much media attention as Wilkes-Barrie. Rick Mason reports on the flood's impact on central Pennsylvania.
While the river dumped more than 1 billion gallons of floodwaters on the Wilkes-Barrie area 20 years ago, the Wyoming Valley was not alone in its misery. Downriver communities from Bloomsburg on the North Branch to Lock Haven on the West Branch also sustained millions of dollars in flood losses from the Susquehanna and its tributaries. Fishing Creek has been the thorn in Bloomsburg's side even more so than the river itself. The town's Scotttown section was hit first when the creek left its banks during Agnes.
Most of the devastation of Agnes was because of that. The second day of the flooding, the river started coming up.
Since the 72 flood, Bloomsburg has developed river stage forecast maps, and an island has been removed from Fishing Creek. But their best hedge against another Agnes is flood insurance, though town officials worry about complacency.
Many people in Bloomsburg have dropped their flood insurance, and certainly any kind of major flooding, any storms that we have today could affect them. So we're looking at starting an effort to encourage them to pick up flood insurance again, particularly the industries.
Danville sustained half as much damage as Bloomsburg, but as Police Chief Butch Lee says, it was still devastating to this community.
The flooding at night, our streams came over and really cut Danville off, and we really couldn't get things out of here in time before a couple days later when the water came over top of the dike.
After 72, Danville's levee system was rebuilt and raised 4 feet. It's now above the Agnes level, and many here now carry insurance.
Everybody in those areas that they were flooded do have flood insurance. It's a compulsory thing that they do have flood insurance.
At Sunbury, the dikes held in 72, though the waters came within inches of the top. The Northumberland County seat is currently conducting a 3-year rehabilitation of its river pumping stations.
And at the end of this year, we anticipate some river stabilization on a project we've been working with the Army Corps of Engineers.
Sunbury's biggest concern is what's developing upriver. If Wilkes-Barrie's dikes are raised 5 feet, another Agnes would hit Sunbury hard.
The more they improve their dike system up there, and they deserve to protect their property, don't get me wrong, but we don't want it filtering down and coming over our wall in the future. So as they develop upstream, we're staying in touch with the Army Corps of Engineers to make sure that they are considering what's going to happen down in our area at the same time.
On the West Branch, Williamsport was spared much of the wrath of Agnes. The river missed topping the levees by a foot. Poor drainage areas did experience moderate flooding. Since then, talk of raising Williamsport's levees several feet has died down, but the city spent millions of dollars to improve runoff. Milton was the only Pennsylvania town with flood insurance before Agnes, but few had policies. Since 72, they've spent $17 million on urban renewal, including demolition of hundreds of homes, leaving room for growth.
Energy-efficient natural gas. It makes a house a home.
When I turn over the keys to a new home, I want it to be perfect, including natural gas heat and appliances. My customers demand it.
I'm one of Joe's customers. I find gas clean and dependable, and it saves money. I love my natural gas home.
For all the things you care about, natural gas from PG&W.
It's Chevy rock-solid value days on S10 pickups. Now you can save over $3,800 on a new Chevy S10 Tahoe, which means you can get one for just $86.72 or just $189 a month. And your S10 Tahoe comes loaded with a V6 stereo cassette, rear step bumper, sliding rear window, two-tone paint, anti-lock brakes, rally wheels, and more for just $86.72 or $189 a month. But hurry, rock-solid value days end June 30th. See your local Chevrolet Geo dealer now.
You know, there's real magic in Diet Pepsi. It's got that special aha ingredient.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. You got the right one, baby. Diet Pepsi. Uh-huh.
Uh-huh. You got the right one, baby. Eh? Okay, girls. Now, what's that magic ingredient?
Uh-huh.
With 100% uh-huh. June 23rd, 1972, the day that changed our lives. In Agnes, a flood of memories, WBRE-TV captures all of the drama caused by Hurricane Agnes, the devastation, destruction, and rebuilding. Be an eyewitness to history. Order your copy of WBRE-TV's one-hour VHS tape, Agnes, a Flood of Memories, just $14.95. Or send $16.95 for the video and the Times Leader Special Edition report, Agnes Revisited.
For days, Wyoming Valley residents tried to return home, but could not. First, the water itself stopped them. 8, 10, 12 feet in their homes, the most important place in their lives. Rowboats took over roads after residents took to high ground.
We got to the Market Street Bridge. It was just like being the only person on Earth. And nobody, I mean, absolutely not a soul, as far as the eye could see.
Then, the National Guard kept homeowners away to protect people from damaged and dangerous homes and to protect houses from possible looters. Guardsmen remember it as their hardest job.
You and your family lost everything, and I was standing on a street corner, and that was your house, and my job was to keep you out of there, right? That was our hardest job, because the people would be crying and say, that's my house, I want to go in there.
Gradually, residents returned, but nothing could prepare them for what they found.
When I first opened the door, this was the worst moment of all. You see everything topsy-turvy where it had floated up to the ceiling and then down again.
God, oh God, what are we gonna do? Come on, you're gonna do it. Oh.
When you see that yellow stuff pouring right through a beautiful home, well, I'm telling you what, break your heart. Really break your heart.
And the labor was backbreaking.
We need help now. I mean, it isn't a little creek that overflowed. It's a whole valley that's destroyed.
The help came. The government set up a disaster assistance center. It provided loans for the future and brooms for the present. And volunteers came from all over the country. Many of the Amish and the Mennonites stayed for weeks. Strangers helped strangers. At Kings remains to show the high water mark. And the memory of hundreds of volunteers remains as well. Joe Balls headed the college's physical plan at the time.
You know, I don't think we could have done it without it. Be just the library alone to clean up that mess. We had 50,000 volumes there that were destroyed, and just to clean that out took weeks.
And those books went to one of the 16 landfills being used. At the height of the cleanup, the Wyoming Valley generated 78,000 tons of solid waste a day. Philadelphia at the time produced only 5 tons a day, with 6 times the population. And during this period, utilities came back to life with assistance and ingenuity.
All ladies with hair dryers in the Wilkes-Barrie-Kingston area are urged to contact the telephone company. They are needed to dry out delicate electronic equipment, so service can be restored.
It comes down to the tragedy of walking in and seeing what's left of a lifetime.
Terrible experience, terrible feeling. You've lost everything, so let it go.
Despite the losses, the determination to rebuild could not be stopped, and pessimism was overcome.
You know that attitude changes. Every day when you come back, you find, well, maybe there is a chance, and you get a little more hope each day.
It was hope that helped people to face the devastation. Day after day, they worked to make neighborhoods such as this warm and welcoming once again. and they put their faith in the future as they rebuilt.
And rebuilding was not a simple task. With every building touched by water, some home and business owners left with nothing had to start from scratch. Still, Agnes offered an unusual opportunity for development, but the road to recovery did not come easy. It was a downtown left flooded out, burned out. Wilkes-Barrie had the eerie look of disaster. It was time to start over, but with so many people left with nothing, the question was how.
There's no way he can get out from under it. He can't even declare a bankruptcy to get out from under it because SBA does not forgive, even in bankruptcy. This follows you to the grave.
This was a common sight. Thousands of people whose homes and businesses were left soaked and crumbled formed the Flood Victims Council. They wanted to find a plan to rebuild. At the time, Congressman Paul Kanjorski served as their general counsel.
I think I attended something like 1,500 or 1,800 meetings with various federal agencies and groups of people and local officials.
But at the onset, following meeting after meeting, it was obvious.
Government was not equipped to meet a disaster of this sort. That's hindsight, but it's a simple fact.
The area never dealt with the likes of Agnes. The people had to find a solution starting from scratch to come back. Enter Congressman Dan Flood. His famous statement, "This will be one flood against another," rang loud and clear in Washington.
Anything we wanted, we got somehow, somewhere. Small and big. Dollars and pennies.
The driving force behind the Flood Recovery Act, he got the valley more than just pennies. He's credited with fighting for and receiving a $5,000 forgiveness grant and SBA loans at a generous 1% interest rate. The congressman claims the greatest highlight of his entire 30-year career was the actions of the people.
There wasn't one person, man, woman, or child, in that whole show that at any time hesitated to do anything they were asked to do or given a chance to volunteer.
And it was that spirit, the driving force of the people, that many claim saved the Wyoming Valley. Still, all agree Agnes both helped and hurt businesses already struggling to make it. Some stories have happy endings, but for others, Agnes put an end to long-time family businesses.
All of a sudden, we found we had the greater part of our city underwater.
A scary feeling, a very scary feeling. I didn't have any place to go.
It was just one of those things, you gritted your teeth and worked.
And work they did. They worked together to rise above the devastating flood and rebuild. That took a special combination of strength, hope, and perseverance.
It was one of these nightmares. You didn't know where to turn first because everything was just devastated.
Clayton Carambells now runs a successful coffee service in Wilkes-Barrie. Only pictures remain from his Boston restaurant and candy store. Since the 1920s, the colorful eatery served as a gathering place for many local folks. It was handed down to each generation, ending with Clayton's because of Agnes. Only fond memories come to mind 20 years later.
Today, there's just so many people out there that will talk and still remember what they used to like, whether it was the clam chowder or the tuna fish casserole, and it gives you a good warm feeling because it's so many years now since that's happened.
It was not a pleasant experience.
Right across the street from the Boston restaurant, the Boston store, now Boscov's. Owner Frank Burnside remembers serving people for free in the cafeteria, loyal employees who lived at the store while mopping up, and opening up a few months after Agnes, only to close down a few years later after 40 years in business. They suffered thousands of dollars in losses from the flood.
It was a terrible, terrifying experience. But in general, people were tough-nosed about it and put up with it and did the best they could.
Including employees at Eastern Pennsylvania Supply Company on South Pennsylvania Avenue.
And there was 5 feet of water at the front door of our building. And I wore my waders down to get into the store, and I threw the stuff out the 4th floor window to the railroad tracks.
Owner Guthrie Cunningham now runs the family business that began back in 1889. It started as a mining supply venture, moved into plumbing and heating, and by the time Agnes hit, was getting ready for site preparation at a new location, the present one on Scott Street.
And of course, that Friday put an end to that because every piece of equipment that you could lay your hands on was very much in demand, and people weren't thinking much about trying to prepare a site for a new building. They were trying to get the old ones back in shape.
Cunningham remembers giving away shovels and other equipment for cleanup. Now 20 years later, the business has expanded to several different locations, serving hundreds of customers in northeastern Pennsylvania.
I walked through here just about up to here, and then I got out. It was cold. And
Gus Giannetti, owner of Giannetti's Hotel and Convention Center, is another post-Agnes success story. His ballrooms were supposed to play host to 7 weddings the day after Agnes. Despite major cleanup, the flood pushed his family to expand.
I figured that with now $600 and some thousand in debt, might as well go for broke. So we started to expand and figured, well, I'm not going to get my original goal of being debt-free, so I might as well just borrow more money, which we did, and we built this whole facility over the following years.
Many local business owners got to know Dave Smith. He served as Director of Real Estate Acquisition for the Wilkes-Barrie Redevelopment Authority. His role quickly changed from doing routine acquisitions to buying up millions worth of homes and businesses. The flood kept his office working 20-hour days, 7 days a week for several weeks.
Businesses were underwater. People were unable to get the normal supplies they needed just to continue life. So our role changed substantially within a 24-hour period.
Your hometown station was another survivor, staying on the air with the help of a gasoline generator supplied by PP&L.
Every once in a while, the picture would start to wiggle. We'd all run downstairs and refill the generator gas tank so it would keep going. You never think about it. Everything's going so smoothly, and all of a sudden, everything went to pieces, and then we'd run down, fill it up, and we were back on the air again. And it was wild.
And wild aptly describes the flood of '72, but all agree the time is characterized by the strength of the citizens who took Agnes on.
Save money at Acme on popular national brands. Mueller's Pasta select varieties 2 for $1. Assorted Ragu spaghetti sauces just 99 cents. You save more at Acme. Your neighborhood store.
Copyfax is one of the fastest growing Canon dealerships in the country today. Our highly trained staff is ready to analyze your office needs with the largest selection of Canon copy systems. Computer service dispatching by our factory-trained technicians makes servicing quick and easy by dispatching calls. Prior to delivery, a marketing support representative will educate your staff and provide continued education throughout your Canon systems life cycle.
Hi, I'm Todd Luth. Make a good business decision today. Call us at Copyfax.
Grab the bell. I'm gonna fly now, I don't care. Do it cool, not do it smooth. Do it up, do it down, now make your move. Get vertical with you. Gonna get vertical. Get vertical. Get vertical with you. Get vertical. Get vertical with you.
It's Chevy rock-solid value days on S10 pickups. Now you can save over $3,800 on a new Chevy S10 Tahoe, which means you can get one for just $86.72 or just $189 a month. And your S10 Tahoe comes loaded with a V6, stereo cassette, rear step bumper, sliding rear window, two-tone paint, anti-lock brakes, rally wheels, and more for just $86.72 or $189 a month. But hurry, rock-solid value days end June 30th. See your local Chevrolet Geo dealer now.
Save money at Acme with these super hot prices. Lancaster brand bottom round roast, $1.49 a pound. Hearst potato chips, 10-ounce bags, just 2 for $3. Get more for your dollar at Acme. Your neighborhood store.
The people of northeastern and central Pennsylvania who lived in the floodplain learned a quick lesson in moving to higher ground. As Dawn Timoney reports, some stayed there, but others returned to rebuild.
The Wyoming Valley looked like a war zone following the wrath of Agnes. It was eerie. In just one day, the furious storm drowned the hopes and dreams of area residents, leaving an incredible trail of destruction. Thousands of people had no place to call home and no money to fix what was left of their houses.
Well, I'm going to board it up, and it can sit here, because I don't have the money. Oh, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people just on our street that just got up and walked away, and they're living elsewhere.
What they want now to just fix it as it is. I could get a brand new home.
The average homeowner lost $29,000. And faced with the possibility that history could repeat itself, many headed to the hills, to higher ground in the back mountain and mountaintop areas.
Every time now that the river goes up, you think about it, Don. You just never lose that fear. When there's any heavy rains, torrential rains, you think, wow, this is just like Agnes. It just never leaves you.
That's why Kathy Poplaski and her husband called the back mountain home today. She married 2 months after the flood and vividly remembers having wedding pictures taken amid the ruins for an article Ladies' Home Journal was doing on the flood. The couple had originally planned to start their new life together in Kingston, but the flood changed their minds.
We love that area of Kingston, but we just had that overwhelming fear that if it happened once, it could happen again, and we just decided to come out and look around up here and ended up here.
Sid Sandler, who owns Lewis & Duncan Sporting Goods store in Kingston, moved his family to Mountaintop after losing both his home and business.
At the house, the living room was in the kitchen, and vice versa. At the store, the same situation. Once the window shattered and the water just gushed in, why, nothing was in the place that it was supposed to be.
Still, Sandler decided to keep his business in Kingston, simply moving it across the street from where it originally stood on Wyoming Avenue.
I thought about it, and then I thought of that quote that lightning doesn't strike twice at the same place, so I rebuilt.
They say home is where the heart is, and some people's hearts were still in Wilkes-Barrie, where their churches and children's schools were. Sandy Rifkin and her husband Arnold moved to Mountaintop for just a year until their home on Riverside Drive was livable again. The Rifkins, needless to say, had no trouble selling their home in Mountaintop.
Many people were approaching us to please buy our house because they had been in much more uncomfortable. They thought of buying something a lot later and they couldn't find things.
Realtors were flooded with business at the time from people who wanted out of the floodplain and who consequently changed the face of the area.
There was an increase in population in the back mountain area as well as Mountaintop by an awful lot of people who came, stayed, and liked it.
There were those, however, who could not handle the disaster and moved out of Pennsylvania altogether.
One fella, he was crying, and he said, "Go to my house and get rid of it." He said, "Here's the deed. It's all water-soaked and everything else." And he said, "I just don't want any responsibility. If you have to have it torn down, tear it down. I'm leaving the area."
In recent years, however, there's been a reversal in trends, and people are moving back to the downtown area. With the dikes rebuilt, their confidence is rebuilt. And 20 years later, there's even new construction going on right here on Riverside Drive, directly across from the Susquehanna River, and not too far from where the river broke back in 1972.
It's impossible to estimate really how serious this situation is, but this is without any doubt the most devastating disaster that's hit Pennsylvania in its history.
You know, there's real magic in Diet Pepsi. It's got that special aha ingredient. Got the right one, baby. Okay, girls. Now, what's that magic ingredient?
With 100%
Sure Save Supermarkets, your first choice.
Sure Save is your first choice for savings with great summer meltdown specials like these. Hanover beans with pork, 14.5-ounce cans, 3 for $1. Sweet and juicy California purple plums, 69 cents a pound. And Turkey Hill ice cream, half-gallon, $2.49.
Sure Save Supermarkets, your first choice.
Believe it or not, you can get a Pizza Hut pizza free. Just purchase any large Pizza Hut specialty pizza at regular price and get a medium pepperoni pizza free. It's our unbelievable pepperoni pizza deal. Buy any large specialty pizza, including our new and improved pepperoni lovers or meat lovers pizzas with 25% more meat toppings and get a medium pepperoni pizza free. Sound unbelievable? Hurry into Pizza Hut today for your free medium pepperoni pizza because eating is believing.
Hey, want to taste a couple of beers?
Sure. You bet.
So which do you prefer?
This one. That's a beer.
Here's Budweiser, and this is Coors Extra Gold.
Oh, whoa!
What if I told you Coors Extra Gold was brewed far longer than Bud?
I had no idea.
70% longer.
I guess there's surprises all the time.
Slow brewed for that real beer flavor and color, the way beer was meant to be, which may be why 58% of Bud drinkers prefer Coors Extra Gold.
Maybe 90%.
Coors Extra Gold. If you're missing real taste, beer is back.
Incredible! These are awesome facts.
It's an area where few can forget the fury of Hurricane Agnes. Every time there's a heavy rain, residents of the Wyoming Valley cast a wary eye towards the Susquehanna River. Is it possible another Agnes situation could hit northeastern Pennsylvania?
It can happen again. The chances of that happening are probably very, very remote. We're looking at a situation that's probably like a 1 in 100-year occurrence.
AccuWeather meteorologist Dave Dombeck says the hurricane was one thing, but what made the situation far worse was an unusually large dip in the jet stream. It transported Agnes and parked it over the northeast.
So Agnes was literally just stuck in this circulation of this closed-off low, and that's why it didn't just go out to sea or didn't just come northward, do its dirty work, and get out of here. It got captured, and this closed low stuck over the east for many days, and that's why it just seemed to rain or shower day in and day out.
Despite all the rain that fell that fateful week of June 1972, no one initially suspected the Susquehanna could breach its banks and inundate the Wyoming Valley. And the reason the river's projected crest fell far short of its actual rise was because of the way flood forecasts were calculated at the time. For one thing, not enough emphasis was placed on projected rainfall. And Jim Syracuse of the Luzerne County Emergency Management Agency says reports of observed rainfall throughout the river basin were rather limited.
There were very few places reporting in. They relied heavily on volunteer observers that had to literally go out and measure by hand the actual amount of rainfall. And again, that information was then generalized for a larger area.
Nowadays, the Emergency Management Agency also uses automatic rain gauges at many river points and can access that information with the computer. The touch of a button can reveal just what areas become inundated when the river reaches a particular level. While there's no 100% guarantee a flood the nature of 1972 can't again happen, officials will be ready like never before.
Our primary goal and responsibility is timely and accurate warning and notification to the public. If we can enhance that time and give people more time as far as preparing for something like this, more lead time, we've met our primary goal.
But questions remain. Are we prepared for the possibility of another flood? And has everything been done that can be done to protect the people and property of the region?
Immediately after the floodwaters from Hurricane Agnes receded, state, local, and national officials vowed the same flood would never happen again. But the very same promise was made after a similar flood 36 years before.
The existing system was built in the period since the flood of 36, so work started in 1940 approximately and continued through about 1956 before all the sections were completed.
Even though $12 million had been spent on the dike system since 1972, flood protection has not been improved. That money was spent for dike repairs and renovations, not improvements. In a few years, though, that will all change.
Beginning in 1995, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers will begin a massive project here along the banks of the Susquehanna to increase flood protection. The $200 million project will raise dike levels anywhere from 3 to 5 feet.
Legislation for those improvements was passed in 1986, 14 years after the Agnes flood.
Since that time, it's been being developed and designed. We've run into a lot of hesitancy. The people have not been very participant. Many people have lost the memory of what happened in the flood, so what could happen in a future flood. But we are on track now. We have the funds moving in this next year for the final design and engineering, and we anticipate that by 1995, hopefully, the system can start.
Once it's completed, the project will probably be the most significant water control project on the eastern seaboard. However, it will not be the end to flood worries in the Wyoming Valley.
The design will provide for protecting the community from a reoccurrence of the flooding that occurred in 1972.
Are there some communities that will be left exposed, shall we say, even after this project is done?
Yeah, there are. The communities that traditionally have had flooding at low levels will again be flooded. The Shikshinies, the Plains Townships, Plymouth Townships, there is no protection plan for them at this time.
That's because there are some sections along the river that have never had flood protection, areas like farmlands and uninhabited zones. But for those who remember Agnes, the dike improvements on the way in 1995 should provide a little more comfort.
Energy-efficient natural gas. It makes a house a home.
Our good name as a builder is on the line with every new home we sell. At Highland Woods, we always recommend natural gas heating and appliances.
Home buyers want the comfort and economy of high-efficiency natural gas heating. At Farnwood Heights, that's what we provide.
For all the things you care about, natural gas from PG&W.
I haven't seen any movie stars, have you? No. Is that Cindy Crawford?
You know, when you see them in person, it's always a disappointment.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Here's your Pepsi, Miss Crawford.
We gotta start drinking Pepsi.
If she had a fever, you wouldn't wait a week to see the doctor. If she were hungry, you wouldn't wait a few days to feed her. So why wait even a day to fix the brakes on the car you drive her around in? At Midas, we don't just fix your brakes right. We can fix them right the very same day you bring in your car. Think about it. Midas, because your brakes can't wait.
June 23rd, 1972, the day that changed our lives. In Agnes, a flood of memories, WBRE-TV captures all of the drama caused by Hurricane Agnes, the devastation, destruction, and rebuilding. Be an eyewitness to history. Order your copy of WBRE-TV's one-hour VHS tape, Agnes, a Flood of Memories, just $14.95. Or send $16.95 for the video and the Times Leader Special Edition report, Agnes Revisited.
For all its nightmarish consequences, there's an almost dreamlike quality to remembering the Agnes disaster, especially as we stand here and look at the placid Susquehanna River today. There's a sense it was something that happened a long time ago and far away. Well, the reality is it happened right here and not all that long ago. And for all the people who lived through it, it will always be a flood of memories.
And the list of those who had been evacuated continued, many finding temporary shelter at GAR High School.
Daisy Acveo, ACVEAO of 28 Sullivan Street. Tom Andrews of the Hotel Sterling. Lillian Atwood of 60 South Washington Street. Robert Angelique and Mr. and Mrs. Robert Shell of 59D Old Karma Terrace. Mr. and Mrs. Peter Berek of 479 Cary Avenue. C.H. Bessert of 444 West Academy Street. Eunice Bebb of 214 Carlisle Street. Calvin Beckman of 29 Hickory Street. John Brody of 29 Hickory Street.